The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "Set out for the villages of the Caesarea Philippi." Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." But he asked them, "Who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this he turned around and, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with the disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The Gospel of the Lord. So in this gospel reading, it's the same event that is in Matthew chapter 16. But this one focuses a little bit differently. In chapter 16 of Matthew, it focuses on Jesus, you're going to get the keys to the kingdom of heaven. But this one in Mark shows something a little bit different. It's interesting if you catch it. So he teaches to teach them that Jesus, he must suffer and die. He must suffer and die. And Peter, now get this, Peter rebukes Jesus. So Peter's rebuking Jesus, our first pope, rebuking Jesus. And Peter's thinking he's doing something good and like, "Lord, you're going to suffer and die. Heaven forbid, I don't want that to happen to you." He's thinking as human beings do. He's like, "No, I don't want that to happen to you." He's actually willing the good for Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He calls him Satan. Whoa. What's going on there? What in the world is going on there? Peter is willing the good, but he says, hey, calls him Satan. You're thinking not as God, but as human beings do. As human beings do. And that's a challenge to us because it turns our whole way of thinking upside down. You know, God's way of thinking, we think God's way of thinking is upside down when we got it backwards. We got it upside down. You know, and hopefully we realize that. And so we start to try to think the way God does, and to think of a way of that, first thing is important is our eternal salvation. We're so practical. We're very pragmatic that way, right? And so we're like, hey, what about this and that? And we're thinking about what's right in front of our nose, and we forget about the long side of heaven. and what we're made for in heaven. So we get kind of pompous a little bit too. You know, so many of us and so many Catholics and people in this post-Christian world, well, prove it to me. You know, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. Forget it. Everything's skepticism, right? And by golly, God has to fit my idea of God is. Heaven forbid if God contradicts with me, contradicts with my thought, right? So that's the way we really think here, you know. Maybe not with all the fluctuations of the voice, but, you know, we kind of think that. Like, well, I'll go shopping for my church and what the preacher, the priest that I want, because I can want to hear what I want to hear. Instead of truly discovering who Jesus Christ is, listening to him, and discovering what he wants or doesn't want in my life, what is his plan for my life, and then trying to follow that whether I like it or not. That's the way it should be, right? So we got to get pompous, we get prideful, especially in this society. And we think that getting to heaven is just going to happen accidentally. You know, I see this, like everybody thinks everybody's getting to heaven. Oh, they're in heaven. They're in heaven. These stars who are in Hollywood, oh, they're in heaven. They sing so beautiful. They made me feel good. They're in heaven. They must be in heaven. They made me feel good. You know, and then, like, of course, it's like everybody's in heaven, but obviously nobody's going to go to hell. Now, if we're willing to accept the idea that there is a heaven, and heaven is bliss and all perfect, but we don't want to accept the idea that hell and that hell is even possible. When we look at the children at Fatima, when Our Lady came at Fatima, she came warning that people were going to hell, and many people were going to hell. More people were going to hell than heaven. That's got to challenge us. And you see the way the children reacted to this. So Jacinta is the youngest one, 7 years old, and Lucia is the oldest at 10 years old. And they see hell. What do they see? Some people say, well, I don't know if it's appropriate for children. Look, children, obviously God thought it was appropriate for these children. 7 years old. What do they see? Burning flesh, lots of crying out, really nasty stuff. And they were so horrified by that, they wanted to do reparation for sins. And in fact, it was so serious. Francesco's like, anything I need to do, whatever it has to do, if there's anything I can do to do it. He's like, offer reparations, pray the rosary, do this, do that. And he's like, he was looking for every opportunity to bring graces to heaven, to bring souls into heaven. So intercession, that they could intercede for other people. And we need to be doing that. And we need to, as ourselves, we need to make sure ourselves we get to heaven. You know, it's not that easy. You know, again, people think they're just going to get there by miracle. It's just like, it's going to be like, oh, poofty, you're in heaven, right? You know, it's like you're taking driving directions or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I thought it said turn right. It meant to go straight. Hey, wait a minute. I'm in heaven. How did that happen? I didn't even try to get to heaven. I'm here. Wow. Is that how you get to heaven? You didn't have any plans and you make the wrong turn and you poofty, you're there? No. Look, how many times do we have events going on? Do we have right here at St. Joseph's or even at St. Mary's Church? And we make all these plans. We get so many people to make different foods and make sure we got all the courses of the meal and everything else. Make sure you got the nice display on the table and everything else. Are you going to have sparkly stars? Are you going to have sparkly dust? Are you going to have, what are you going to put on there, right? We're making all these plans for all these things. You have a plan for what you're going to do for the rest of your life as a profession. You might go to college. You're going to have a plan for going to college and getting your degree. You got to take this class, that class, this class, that class, and then you got to, you know, make sense of it all too yourself. And then you got to be right with when you're doing it. You can't go out and party when you're at college. If you're not, you know, that's going to be kind of hard. So you make plans on your whole life, but we're not making plans for heaven. As if heaven doesn't need any plans. Well, what's greater? Heaven or what? I got my bicycle right up in the rectory on the second story. I have my plans of riding the bicycle. I'm not good at implementing that very well. I'm not getting any healthier. I'll be 50 this week, I'm not getting any healthier, I got to implement the plan too, and I got to have the plan. If I don't have a plan, it's not going to happen. So, what's your plan? What's your plan to get to heaven? What is the strategy that you have? Remind you, the devil has a strategy for you. We know it every time we fall. Every time we sin and we have regrets, that's the fruitfulness of the devil's plan. He knows how to attack you. He knows how to get to you. And by the way, he doesn't sleep because he doesn't have a body. We sleep because we have a body. We get tired. We need to sleep. The devil doesn't sleep. The demons don't sleep. They're always strategizing, trying to figure out a way to get you to fall and to keep you from heaven and to keep you from God's grace. So, are you doing anything to confound that strategy? Are you strategizing? Heaven is a gift, but we still got to do our part. And a lot of times, we got to think about this, and I hear this a lot. Well, what the bishops did. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. Forget it. Abandon the church. Just get rid of them. Because you see all what the bishops are doing. Yeah. Well, if the bishops are going to hell, then I guess they're going to hell. Nothing I can do about it. But for me, I'm going to serve our Lord. What does that have to do with Jesus Christ and Him dying on the cross for me? That's the reality of it. If they're going to hell, fine. That's God's justice. There are a lot of good bishops out there. Don't get me wrong. But what is a bishop doing and what he's doing have to do with my eternal salvation? Is my faith based on a bishop? Who do I worship, a bishop or Jesus Christ? Who do I follow and who am I obedient to? Jesus Christ. And by the way, the Holy Spirit does work through the church. I experience it every time I go to confession, myself. I experience it every time I say, this is my body given up for you. And there is Jesus right there. And somehow, some way, I always receive His grace unfailingly, every time. Because the sins of a priest and a bishop does not confound the grace of Jesus Christ. The grace of Jesus Christ is more powerful than any sin that any human being could ever commit. And that's the power of God. And that's the goodness of God. He's got only fallible men to work with. That's all He's got. Sorry. That's all He got. Fallible men. Poor Jesus. Poor people of God. But that's what we got. And so I'm not willing to let go of that. I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I need God's grace. And we all need God's grace. And that's why I'm not going to leave Jesus Christ. Because of what some other person did. And so we follow Jesus Christ and we take that as a reality that Jesus Christ is truly good. He is love. He truly did die on the cross for us. Such was His will and His love for us. What an awesome thing that we find in Jesus Christ, all the graces we receive. What an awesome thing that we can come here and actually worship before our God and receive those graces as we give ourselves to Him, that He would still continue to give Himself to us. It's not a worldly way of thinking. It's a godly way of thinking. To be focused on the virtue and the grace of Jesus Christ and not on the trip-ups of this world that always seem to drag us down. To persevere in faith in Jesus Christ and to love Him with all our hearts. To say yes to the call of heaven.